It popped up.
Hey, Soul Survivors. I'm Cynthia Schiller, and I am here with Ashley, who is joining us based on a reply to my request for people to share their stories about narcissistic abuse. You'll be able to see the twists and turns and how all that comes to be over the years. And Ashley, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm 41. I have two children, amazing kids, and I was in an abusive relationship with what I believe is a narcissist for 15 years.
Can I ask how long the relationship was good?
um, Probably for about the first 5, 6 years. There was red flags now that I look back that I ignored.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020. We often overlook the red flags. What kind of red flags did you see?
Well, now that I look back on it, I see that there was always lying. There was always the leaving and disappearing for a couple of days on end, the manipulation, the gaslighting.
Do you see a pattern in like when they would leave, what their triggers were?
Yeah, when they would get called out for the lying or being deceitful when things didn't go their way.
Now, what did you call them? Magic pants?
Yes, my ex had what we call magic pants. He was called out for a screenshot that was found on his phone of a female's Instagram account. And when I say that, I mean he was logged into that person's Instagram and he asked me if his pants could have taken a screenshot. And I was like, yeah, but you're telling me your pants downloaded the Instagram app, logged into a random girl's account, and went to her messages where there were messages that said such and such sent you a video, such and such sent you a photo, which, come on, we all know what those are.
Yeah, and at first when you saw that, you thought it might have been through like Facebook,
Yes,
and so you kind of call him out on it. He's like, I don't even have that on Facebook, and you have to do
correct.
your
Because he had
own
given up
research.
his Facebook because, he wanted to change and make things right and look at purchasing a new house. And, we need a fresh new start. So I'm not going to log on to Facebook anymore. So instead, he took it to Instagram.
So you have a child with him, right?
Yes. A
And is
12.
that around the time that the child was born?
No, that was actually 2 years ago. Right after that was when he brutally discarded us and just walked out. I
How,
mean, there was some stuff leading up to it. There was a confrontation, and he ended up calling the cops and saying that I sexually assaulted him, which the cops found no evidence and actually laughed about it. And they asked him to leave that night. So he left. And then for the next like 4 days, it was a week, he would come back and come in, take a shower, then leave and leave for the night. And even my next door neighbor was like, Ash, we see him taunting you. So I put a stop to that. I locked all our screen doors so he couldn't do it anymore. And then now he runs around and tells everybody I barricaded him out of the house.
and I know you said that he had a porn addiction, and also he would leave for what, weeks at a time, or you talked about the silent treatment for about 3.5 weeks.
Okay, yeah, the silent treatment. And let me tell you, girl, that I feel was the most mine. It messed with my mind so much because
It
it would,
starts causing brain damage.
yes, it would leave me questioning, like, did I do something wrong? Like, if I would call him out for the pornography, and I am visually impaired, so I'm considered legally blind. So he would like literally sit right next to me and watch it, and I felt like he was taking advantage of my eyesight because most people can look over and
Right.
see what's on the screen, but I couldn't. And when he would get called out about that or lying or even questioned, all of a sudden he would stop talking to me. And it turned out that eventually it wasn't just me he would stop talking to. He went 3.5 weeks without even talking to me and our children.
So
So
because he was mad at you, he wouldn't even talk to the kids.
no, he
Would he
wouldn't even
talk to
talk.
his kid?
No.
Okay.
He rarely ever spent time with her. Whenever he was home, he was so glued to his phone. The only time he would actually like sit down and play like Uno with her was when he was mad at me and he was giving me the silent treatment. And then our daughter would be like, Mom, do you want to come and play? And then he would purposely, because I can't see the cards that good, he would purposely not tell me like what card was like being laid down. Or there was one time that I got a letter in the mail from my health insurance. Now, mind you, we've been together 13 years and he's always opened my mail. And my son ended up finding the letter and he opened it and he's like, Mom, you know, if you don't contact them by tomorrow, your insurance is going to be canceled. And I have an autoimmune condition called neuromyelitis optica.
Oh,
And
that's in your eyes? Is that what causes the blindness?
that's what caused my blindness, but it's similar to multiple sclerosis, but has to be treated different. The symptoms mimic multiple sclerosis, but where multiple sclerosis, you can kind of let the attack like play out itself. With NMO, you can't. It's very crucial to get treatment, which is high doses of steroids. And what it is that it's our immune system attacking the spinal cord and optic nerves. Like I know some people who are blind and in wheelchairs, so I consider myself fortunate. But I have to get a very expensive chemo drug every 6 months. So I can't afford for my insurance to cancel.
Right.
I confronted him and I was like, dude, you know, my insurance is about to cancel because you didn't read me the mail. I didn't think I had to. You've been reading me the mail for 13 years. Just because you're not talking to me doesn't mean that all of a sudden I've got my eyesight back.
Right.
Or when we would be out, like he would have to take me grocery shopping. He would purposely like not tell me about a step coming up. And he would be like, oh, Sue, that's what we call our daughter. He'd be like, grab your mom, help your mom.
Did he ever walk ahead?
Oh, always.
And especially with your disability, you would think he would at least slow down and walk with you.
Oh, no, he would always walk ahead of us. And then when our daughter got old enough to start helping me, it was always, oh, grab your mom's hand. You walk with her.
Now we're coming up on Christmas, and you mentioned something about during the holidays and birthdays. This is a narcissistic thing for some reason. It always went bad.
They always start an argument. And actually, one of my best friends, towards the end of our relationship, mine and his, she never would come over. I'm like, why won't you come over for a barbecue? And she would always kind of like be like, oh, well, my husband doesn't want to come over. She would make different excuses. And it wasn't until he left and she's like, ASHLEE, I couldn't sit there because there were times where she was on the phone with me and he didn't know. And he would call me all sorts of names. She saw the true side of him.
Okay.
And he's like, I can't sit there knowing that he said that stuff to you the night before and then come over. She's like, I can't watch him be all sweet and nice because the next day we have a gathering and people are over and all of a sudden he's the sweetest. Oh my God, I wish I had a husband like him kind of person. Right. You know what I'm saying? She's like, I couldn't watch it anymore. I just couldn't deal with it. I can't do it. And I'm like,
you do a lot of love bombing too.
After every argument, all of a sudden he would want to, oh, let's go to Disney, or here, look, I picked this up for you at the store, especially with our daughter. Oh yeah. Oh, I got you some toys, or you know what I'm saying? I did this, or let's like back in January of 2023. That was one of the biggest discards. He disappeared for a week and blew over $2,500. But then all of a sudden he comes back and let's look for a new house. Let's start over. Let's get a fresh new start and this, and you're my world. I can't live without you. If we ever split up, it would take me years to be with somebody. No, within 4 weeks after a 15-year relationship, within 4 weeks, he drove 15 hours on Father's Day weekend to be with this girl, but yet didn't want to spend it with his daughter. And then within 6 weeks, he was saying, I love you. And within 6 months, he had left the state where his daughter was and moved in with her. Rejected.
It's not like Do you think that he was seeing this girl before the breakup?
Um,
And how did he meet her?
okay, funny story. Supposedly they were middle school sweethearts, but yet she's 4 or 5 years younger than him. Well, I mean, she now has a new boyfriend and she's middle school sweethearts with him too. So,
Oh,
and the funny thing is that the 20, because I knew my ex prior to being in a relationship with him. I was actually best friends for like 20 years with his cousins. So I was a part of the family. And the minute I get with him, the whole family hates me now.
why do you think that is?
I don't know, because I bettered his life. Before me, he had nothing. He was addicted to drugs. And with me, we built a house, we built a family, we bought a
Yeah,
house.
there's times if you take him outside of that party zone, it's like you just took our party boy.
Yeah.
And then you're the bad guy, but for
Yep.
helping them.
Oh yeah, his mom used to always make, and she drinks a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised if she was a narcissist too, along with his younger sister, because I'm keeping the kids from them. I'm the one that's not letting them, but yet
That's probably his
out
stories.
to our kids. Just like he tells people, oh yeah, she's keeping my daughter from me, but yet didn't tell people how I gave him a parenting plan and he rejected it. He wanted his tools. Once I gave him his tools, he would look over the parenting plan. I said, our daughter's not a bargaining chip. Like,
Right.
fine, you don't get neither.
Now you had asked him to go to therapy. Did he go to therapy?
No, he said he didn't need anybody to tell him how to love. But yet, 6 weeks after leaving a 15-year relationship, he was saying, I love you to somebody else.
And not all narcissists are physically abusive. Was he physically abusive?
Um, he was arrested one time for what was classified as domestic violence. He was caught watching pornography and I confronted him about it. And his exact words, he was sitting at the kitchen table eating soup. And I shouldn't have done it. I admit I was in the wrong, but he was sitting at the kitchen table eating a bowl of soup and he looked at me and told me that he was a man and I needed to get the F over it. He was going to watch it if he wanted to. Well, that triggered me and I pushed his bowl of soup off the table. How I managed to do it without burning myself or
Right.
mind blowing. Well, he turned around and threw a glass of tea in my face. So the cops were called. He was arrested that night for domestic violence. The next day, I went up and me and his best friend bailed him out. We were at his court hearing, which he doesn't know I was there. And he is running around telling everybody that the judge actually found it funny and was laughing about it. I'm like, no, she wasn't. She actually ordered him to not even, I could have had him arrested because he came back to the house after he was released.
They
But
don't
then,
like to follow rules.
but then what happened after that? Oh, I love you. I shouldn't have done that. And I dropped the charges.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he probably went back to same old patterns.
Yes. Yes.
I have a friend, she's going through that right now. He was like choking her out and she's well, he did have some abuse in his childhood. He gets stressed. She's like giving all the excuses and he's like blowing up, like he's gonna go to jail. They ended up coming and because he didn't show up to court, they arrest him, he goes to jail, they bound him out. And he was supposed to go just a few days ago for like a trial type thing, and he blew that off. So he's on the run and he's just making it worse and worse and worse.
Well, there was another incident where when our daughter was about 6 months old, we lived in a condo and we had gone down to his mom's for the weekend and it was New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Well, his family got completely crap face like always. His sister passed out hanging over the bathtub and he was passed out because he used to tell me all the time, I can't deal with him or I can't deal with them unless if I'm drinking as well. So by 5 o'clock, he was passed out from drinking so much. I went into the room where he was laying, and he was laying on the floor, and I kind of like nudged him with my foot. And I was like, dude, your sister is passed out over the tub. Like, this is your family. You need to get up and deal with them. And so when we ended up coming home the next day, I at that point, I was done. Like, I don't want to be around this anymore. So I asked him to leave, and he went over to his cousin's house, which is where he lives now. And the next day they do asphalt. So they were repaving the parking lot where our condos were. And I hear this knock at the door, and it's his cousin. And I'm like, what do you want? He's like, oh, why you got to be so rude? Like, I just need to use the bathroom. And he walks in, and of course I smell alcohol all over him. Our daughter is 6 months old, sleeping in our room. And my son's like 9 years old, and he's playing in his room. And his cousin comes out of the bathroom, and I'm like, get out of my house. Like, you use the bathroom, now leave. Oh, well, what are you doing? Hiding somebody? So at that point, I thought he had sent him over there to investigate. And, it's just me and my children. And I don't know if you have children, but when our kids are young, we're women. Like, the first thing that comes off when we come home are our bras, right? So I'm in the house, and I'm feeling awkward. So I'm standing with my arms crossed, because at this point, I don't have a bra on. And he goes into, I'm like, you know what? Check my house. Like, I don't care. I'm not hiding anything.
Oh, I would not have let him check my house.
Well, he goes into, I use that as an opportunity to go into my bathroom and hurry up and put on a bra. Okay. And next thing I know, thank God I locked the bathroom door behind me, because the handle jiggles. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? And then I come walking out, and I go sit out front. And as I'm walking out, I hear psst, psst. And I have blackout curtains all over my house. And since my daughter's sleeping in the bedroom, I have them closed. So it's completely dark in my room. And I go out front, and my son comes out there, and he's like, Mom, such and such, I'm not going to say the person's name, is in your bedroom. I said, I know he's in my bedroom, and I'm not going in that dark room. So my son walks in there, and he's like, Mom knows you're in here. You might as well come out, because she's not coming in here. And he comes walking out front, and he's sitting there trying to talk to me. And I grab, like, my son's kneeling down. I like literally grab him by the back of the shirt and drag him into the house and slam the door. Well, after that evening, my ex comes over to pick up the kids to take them out to dinner. And I'm like, why did you send your cousin over here? And he's like, what do you mean? Well, I'm 99 sure I know what his intentions were, hiding in my bedroom with it pitch dark.
Right.
I mean, you form your own opinion.
And being drunk, and yeah.
Maybe he just wanted to dance. I don't know. But I'm not going in there. So then he ends up getting mad at his cousin and not speaking to him for several years. And, I'm the bad person. And we end up getting into an argument one day, and he throws his cousin in my face. He's like, well, you had no ripped clothes. There were no marks. So how do I know he was going to do anything to you? I'm like, okay, if that's the way you think the way you want to think. And so he goes out into our garage, and he starts blaring the radio just obnoxiously. And I go out there, and I'm like, can you please turn it down? I had just gotten my chemo, so I was exhausted. And he's like, no. And so I climb up on the bar, and I try turning down the radio, and he moves it over. And I'm like, are you serious? So I start unplugging the speakers. Like, if you're not going to turn it down, then I'm just going to unplug the speakers. And he grabs the radio and shatters it on the ground. And then I'm sitting in the chair, and there's a fan behind my head, and he goes and rips off the fan behind my head. Everybody in my circle is like, what he really wanted to do. And I'm like, maybe. So a lot of people do believe that the violence was starting.
Yeah, starting to escalate.
But technically, he never really put his hands on me.
Well, the assault with the T, but that's not his hands. Yeah.
Correct.
Wow. Yeah. Because it's important to know that this narcissistic abuse does not always have physical.
No, it doesn't.
Abuse, but sometimes it can escalate. It can go years. So some of us got out before it would have ever even happened. So we don't even.
I sit here and I reflect back, and I guess call it what you want, during, oh my God, let's talk about the smear campaign.
That's a big,
That is a hard one to deal with. I'm still having trouble
yeah,
accepting it.
because people won't believe when you're like, no, that did not happen. They're like, yes, it did. You're
And when most people hear fighting, they think of yelling and screaming. In these types of relationships, no, it's more of a mind game with them. So the silent treatment, you
the
know what I'm saying?
silent treatment. And also, if you see, like, even just your garage story with the radio,
Yes.
a lot of
Yes.
it deals with the disrespect.
You know, and that's one thing I always told him. I'm like, you have no respect towards me. And we got into a disagreement one day, and I had been in therapy. I was working on myself. Like I thought, I'm not saying I was innocent, not one bit, but I thought like, okay, maybe if I do this differently, maybe if I give him the benefit of the doubt, like he did have a crappy childhood. There is a lot of incest and SA in his family, and I'm just now learning about it all. So,
Like where the porn addiction comes from too.
maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We didn't all have a good childhood. Yes, I didn't have a perfectly good childhood either, but it didn't make me grow up to
And
be a shit
sometimes too, they
person.
can have a spectacular.
Yeah, yes.
And I
Yeah.
mentioned something too that so let's say my parents, okay, I'm not saying I have bad parents, but let's say my parents are like, you are so beautiful. You are so
Yes.
beautiful.
Yep. Yep.
Like that's fantastic, right? But if I don't feel it, now I'm like, I'm the ugly one. Like
Mhm.
how do I fix my hair? And do I need to lose weight? And how am I going to be the pretty one? And it's
Yes.
like, we just called you beautiful. And sometimes that can turn into a trauma. It
Yes.
sounds weird.
No, and it can happen. Like the brain is magical thing. Like it's crazy. And it just like the manipulation that goes on with them. And there was, like I said, I was seeing a counselor. My counselor's like, I want you to name like 5 different things that he could change. And
That
one,
he could change.
yeah, one,
Okay.
like name 5 things that bother you that he does and let him know, and vice versa. He needs to tell you some things that bother you. And the only thing he could come up with was when we were intimate, I didn't look in his eyes anymore. And to be honest with you, towards the end, I I couldn't look in his eyes. There's nothing there. It's like he was empty. And I don't know if you've experienced it, but maybe some of your viewers have, and this should be brought up. How enraged they get when their eyes turn black.
Yes. And I did a video on that. A lot of like scientifically, there's adrenaline that
Yes.
dilates the pupils. It can happen too when you're in love, but I think it just gets so extreme with them.
Mhm.
Like when we get
Yeah.
set up.
So I had told him things that had bothered me. Like he would literally start a fight and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm headed out to Pulp County where he knows that a bunch of girls grew up there. Well, they didn't grow up there, but a bunch of girls that he grew up with moved there." And I just said a random town, honestly. And he would throw that in my face. And then he would go down to his family members. And of course, you don't care about your appearance on an everyday base, but
Right.
yet when we're fighting, you want to shave, you want to put on the cologne, put on the nice clothes, tell me
And the
you
cologne, like if he's not a cologne wearer.
yes, you do you, I'll do me, and you disappear for the weekend. What is anybody supposed to think? And
Right.
then on your way out, you tell me that you're going to go to a town where there's a bunch of girls. Well, joke's on him, because a longtime friend of mine actually is friends with one of the girls. And they're like, dude, I haven't seen that boy since I saved him from choking on a Cheeto when he was 3 years old. And she's like, I honestly think that he has a personality disorder. And the way I came across narcissism, because, when he discarded us, I knew the relationship, that it was toxic. There was things wrong, like the silent treatment, like that's not normal. I knew that something wasn't right, but I didn't know what it was. And he had started a brand new Facebook, because he's got to get supply now. And
Mhm.
he started flirting with every girl he could possibly flirt with. and he ended up going down south, and he was making it seem like he was headed down there to see her as well. So I reached out to her. And I was like, up until a week ago, he had a whole family, and I sent her our wedding picture. And I'm like, and now he's flirting with you. And she's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's not what's going on. Well, till this day, 2 years later, we're still friends and we support each other. Well, I tell her this situation and stuff. And she's like, ASHLEE, I want you to look into what's called a trauma bond. And I'm in the medical field. I do podcasts with pharmaceutical companies, studies, and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, what the hell is a trauma bond? I've never heard of that before. I've heard of Stockholm syndrome and stuff like that.
Right.
So I researched trauma bond, and it says most trauma bonds are formed from a narcissistic relationship.
Yeah, it's that intermittent reinforcement and the silent treatment, the cognitive dissonance. And
what the hell is narcissistic? Like, what is that?
yeah.
So then I go to TikTok.
The rabbit hole begins.
I go to TikTok and I come across Lee Hammock.
Yes.
And I start watching his videos, and I'm sending them to my best friend, and I'm like, holy shit.
The thing is he's a diagnosed narcissist, yes, and they can give great advice.
But it's just his way of giving I mean, I have learned so much from him, and I'm watching all his videos, which open up the door to other people. And I come across you. I come across another TikToker named Heather Hart, who is a trauma bond therapist. And all of a sudden, everything makes sense now. It's all coming together. And I'm just like, oh my God. Well, another advice for your viewers too is, one, ignore the smear campaign, because like I said, when I was going through my therapy, one thing I brought to his attention, I asked him, what do you bring to the table other than a paycheck? Because I'm disabled, so I only get so much a month. Right. I'm like, other than a paycheck, what do you bring to this relationship? Absolutely nothing. Well, he used that against me on the smear campaign. All of a sudden,
you're ungrateful or what?
I'm ungrateful. I'm only with him for the paycheck, and that's all I'm interested in, and blah, 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 blah. And
so he's twisting your words.
She's not legally blind. She's lying about it, even though I've been declared legally blind from the state that I live in. And I have a guide dog, which came from Guide Dogs for the Blind, which they don't just accept Joe Blow. You know what I'm saying? Like,
do you drive?
I don't.
So you're living the life. It's not like of a blind person. And
yeah, I had to go through the mobility training in order to get accepted into this guide dog school. If you look up Guide Dogs for the Blind, it's one of the biggest guide dog schools in America. People come from all over the world, from Canada. They come from everywhere to get one of their guide dogs.
But yeah, and I want to say this. I had a friend in high school who she got her driver's license at age 14 because her mom was legally blind.
Yes, I have not always been legally blind. I started losing my eyesight 6 weeks after giving birth to my son when I was 21. So I'm completely blind in the left eye, and I'm 2400 in the right eye. Like, you can literally Google my condition, and that's the first thing that pops up is blindness and paralyzation.
What started that?
I have an autoimmune condition called neuromyelitis optica. I had gotten a vaccine after giving birth to my son, which was really not necessary, but the hospital refused to let me go until I get it. But I also was bitten by a spider. So they don't know if it was basically they don't know what causes it, but we all have what's called aquaporin 4 antibodies in our blood, but your body knows how to turn it off. Mine doesn't. Okay. And what it basically does is thinks that there's an infection, and it shoots out all these antibodies, which eventually, since there is no infection, it thinks your optic nerve and spinal cord is the infection, and it starts eating away at the myelin, which is what covers the nerves and the spinal cord and stuff like that.
So was this before you met your husband?
Yes. Yes.
And are you legally divorced now?
Well, we weren't legally married. We never
Okay.
turned in the certificate, but we did get the marriage license, have the ceremony and
Okay.
things
Did you
like
go
that.
through like a custody hearing?
No,
No.
I gave him the parenting plan and he chose to not even look at it. I have emails where he's literally saying, "Oh, well, I'll look at the parenting plan when you give me my tools back."
That should
My
have nothing to
lawyers,
do with if you want to see your kids or not. You should jump through hoops.
thank you. I would freaking push mountains. And that's during my healing. Like, it is what it is. He did what he did to me, whatever. But how do you walk away from your child? And, sometimes I'm like, I wish she was younger because he sent her a text message. So he couldn't even do it in person. Okay, let's see. The last time he saw her was in June of 2023. Yeah, because we're going on 2 years. He ended up sending her a text. He never called. He would only send her text messages late at night. Say, I love you. I miss you. I hope to see you soon. But yet he was jumping on a plane and flying to this state to be with his new supply. He sends her a text on, I believe it was September 18th, saying, "Hey, honey bun, dad just wants to let you know I'm going to move to
Oh, fake
California."
news, he's just texting,
Yeah. He tells her he's going to move and he'll be back once the boys get out of school.
which was at the end of the school year, or are you talking in a couple years?
It
And
would have been at the end of the school year. Well, for one, those aren't even his kids. They're hers.
uh,
But the way he wrote the text, everybody who's read it, even the lawyers are like, he's got kids with another person. I'm like, no. You know what that did to my child, a 10-year-old?
yeah,
It devastated her. She broke down and she's like, Mom, why am I worthless? Why doesn't he want to fight to see me? Why is he choosing somebody else and her kids? I said, it's not you, baby. That's one thing you have to understand. It's not you.
mm,
And she's been in therapy since then and is thriving and doing good. I sometimes wish she was younger so she didn't have to go through the pain, but
right.
I'm blessed that my children are old enough that they saw it. Like, I went to my son, he's 20 years old. And this was shortly after my ex left. And I said, I don't even know why I'm crying over him. And my son looked at me and said, I don't know why you're crying either, Mom. I've sat here and watched you change yourself for 2 years, and I see him still mentally abusing you. And
Yeah,
that's when I was like, I'm not crazy.
yeah, because they abuse us even when they're not there.
I'm not crazy. He's still, girlfriend, he's still doing it. He called my best friend. She was over at my house the last weekend of Halloween, I think it was. He called her, private called her 55 times.
Oh, wow.
He even followed her the other night after she left my house.
Was his purpose to get with her or to understand what's going on with you?
We don't know what it is. Like Lee says, could be, could not be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what because when he calls her, he would literally, because we actually tested it one day. She hadn't been over in like a week, and she comes over and she's like, Ash, haven't gotten any private calls. Let's see if I get one. I shit you not, after her being at my house for only 30 minutes to an hour, he calls. And it's like, so that he called her on our daughter's birthday when I was in the middle of having a birthday party. And literally, he's not talking. He's having either his cousin or his other cousin speak on his behalf. And they
Flying
said,
monkeys.
yes, they said to her, I see your car. I'm like, so that means he's watching and there's nothing I can do because I live on a main street. So my injunction lawyer's like, Ash,
Yeah.
can't do nothing about it right now. We can't prove the unblocked calls unless if they pull the phone records, and we're tempted to pay to have that done so we can prove it's him. And like he doesn't, other than that, he doesn't say anything. He did have his cousin, I guess, reference. He had her, they called her one night and was like, you DTF or something. I'm not sure what.
Oh,
We had to look it up, and I'm like,
down to have sex. Yeah.
yes. I'm like, are you kidding me? So then I was like, you know what? Let's play his game. Maybe he wants to know some updates. So she would answer the call when she was here, and I'd be like, hey, ex-narcissist, we're not going to say his name because
Right.
God forbid I bash him. I'm like, what do you want? You want to know what's going on in our lives? Like, my guide dog had cancer. It's been removed. My dad died. My aunt died. There was a shooting out front of our house. I'm actually getting ready to go to court to testify on that. Like, let's see, what else do you want to know? Since apparently you're calling, like, why else are you calling? Like, you don't even have the balls to step up and say something. Like, but then it just got, I'm like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I'm not going to feed into it. I mean, the smear campaign is still going on. I had a mutual friend of ours run into me not that long ago, and he is like, "Oh, well, I heard you're keeping him from seeing his daughter." I'm like, did he tell you I offered him a parenting plan? No, of course not.
Right. And luckily you have records of that because you
Oh,
sent it through email, right?
and well, I sent it through email. My lawyers looked over it, made sure it was good to go, and that's
Now let me
another.
ask you this though. Because I'm in Michigan, it sounds like you're in Florida.
Yes.
But if there's nothing written, or unless it's like signed too, like you got to be careful on that and notarized and all that stuff, filed possibly, but he can keep the kids or kid.
Yes.
So be careful. Like,
Well, I am lucky because we did go to court for child support in January because I mean, I even have text messages where he's like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to give you any money right now to take care of our daughter because I need to see if you can make it on your own." Knowing that I can't financially make it on my own, but I'm a determined person. I don't let nothing hold me back. And I am now luckily getting child support. They had to go and garnish his wages in order for me to get it, but I did figure out ways to survive after him leaving, and here I am 2 years later still holding strong and living in my house, paying my bills where he's living with family, and
oh,
it's
good point too. Yeah. How was he with jobs? Did he keep jobs, change jobs?
I was actually reflecting back on that the other day. I always like in the shower, I'll be thinking about stuff and I'm like,
Yes, it's in the shower.
yeah.
I do.
And I'll text my best friend and be like, hey, I just got out of the shower. She's like, what'd you think about? Got an apostrophe. um,
Exactly.
well, when he first moved up here, I was the reason why he got a job. I got him the job. And now that I look back on it, he was fired from that job, and it was supposedly because he got tired of one of the coworkers accusing him of, I guess, shooting up.
Oh.
So he was fired from that, and then he was fired from the moving company because of somebody. And I look back now, and I'm like, it's always because of somebody else. He was fired from the company that he had been with. I mean, he can. It's not that he can't hold down a job, because the job where he's at now, he's been there for 4 years, which he left to go be with his new supply. But now that he's back here in Florida, he got his job back, but he steals from the company all the time. The job before that, he claims he was fired for talking crap about one of the, I guess he's a supervisor's son. He says it wasn't fair that he was getting privileged and my ex wasn't. But then also people started questioning him about his weight. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, how did you drop weight so fast? And it seems like as soon as he's questioned, all of a sudden he's fired.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
And that's the thing too, though. You were talking about, I think it was his cousins or somebody, like the family, doing the recreational stuff and,
yes.
Like
he,
the people that we hang out with can influence us. That's why certain people,
oh yeah.
like if their friends are getting divorced, they have a higher risk of getting divorced themselves. So we have to think about who they hang around with and that, or how they treat other people. They treat other people like dirt. Eventually, they're going to treat us like that.
Yes, well, see, that's the thing about my ex to the outside world. He would take off his shirt and give it to you. Like I have an older couple that I'm friends with, and when they heard about the split, she was like, "Ash, I used to be so jealous of y'all's relationship." And I'm like, "You don't know what goes on behind closed doors." And for an example, this is a great example. And on my TikTok, I made a video about it because,
What's your TikTok? Go ahead and
yes,
plug it. What's your TikTok?
my TikTok is Narcissistic Survivor. And you can also look me up by ASHLEE01.
Okay.
Or, yeah, I think it's
You
01.
spell Ashley, ASHLEE, right?
Yes, and it's 04.
Oh,
But I believe you can type in Narcissistic Survivor and it pops up. I also have a YouTube. It's all done under the same thing, Narcissistic Survivor. So we went to court back in January for child support, and the manipulation, he even got to the judge. I was like, are you kidding me? Because 90% of the time, they came up with the amount, and of course he disputed it, and he tried saying that he did not voluntarily quit his job, but yet he put in his 2 weeks. So isn't that voluntarily quitting your job?
right. Unless the
So
thing was under duress or something, but
he told the judge, I had no choice but to leave the state of Florida because she kicked me out. So
okay, you had that much power.
that's why he moved to his new supplies house.
Yeah.
But isn't it funny? His new supply cheats on him and throws him out. And now he's back in Florida and he's got somewhere to live 2.7 miles from us in the aunt's house that she's owned for like 20 years. Isn't that amazing how that works?
Yeah.
And so he manipulated the judge so bad, and I just could not believe it. But where they messed up is his ex supply is she's a gamer. She says she's a gamer, but I don't know much about video games.
No,
So
you're a player, you're not a gamer.
would live stream. And after our court hearing, she was live streaming, and they were talking shit, not only about me, but about the judge. And I've got it all recorded.
Ouch.
All you want, but baby, I already got it recorded. And in it, she's like, oh, did you tell them that you didn't voluntarily quit your job? Even though that's what it was. You chose. You cashed in your 401k, which would have given you plenty of money to get your own apartment. You had 6 months of paychecks, which would have given you the money, because when he left here, he was living at his shop. So he didn't have any bills. So between over $10,000 and 6 months worth of paychecks, which he's up there with paychecks.
Was that the deal, the severance pay?
No, he cashed in his 401k.
Oh, that's how he got the 6 months. Okay.
That's how he got the amount of money.
Okay.
But between all that, you couldn't get your own place to stay here for your child? Mind blown. So he's in there.
He probably spent several hundred on a plane ticket or the gas, but he can't put a deposit.
Well, and I found out that they do a lot of nose candy.
Okay.
And I guess
yeah,
Xanax bars and stuff like that. And I have been told that it's been done in my garage, and I didn't know about it. And my best friend's like, oh yeah, actually my husband did it a couple times with him. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like that would have drawn the line right there for me. So in this video, he's sitting there rolling a blunt and he's talking crap about the judge. Oh, you know how it is. A judge sees tits and ass and they give him what they want. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But where he messed up is he makes a comment. I don't care if my daughter wants to be in my life. I'm going to look like a good father. And the key word right there was look, not be a good father.
Right.
He just wants to make sure he looks like a good father.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I'm like,
and that's what it is they'll put in the effort, you know, to
as long
look good.
as
And why do they want to look good for themselves?
oh yeah, as long as it makes them look good. Like, and the best advice I can give to your viewers, followers, is if you are trying to co-parent with a narcissist or a toxic person, evidence. Keep everything.
Yeah.
Make sure everything goes through text messages, preferably emails, because you can't really alter an email address.
And it has a date and time.
Everything.
And
I
keep a
have
record, like a paper record, a running journal.
I have some paper record, video records, like everything. Keep it all. That's gonna be what protects you, because in the end, they may, yeah, we only had one court hearing for the child support, and he even stated on there, the judge was like, you know, this doesn't have anything to do with custody. And to go back to custody, you saying that if he decided to knock on the door and our daughter chose, which she's old enough that it's her choice. If you want to go see your dad, by all means, go see your dad. I'm not going to stop you.
Right.
But if he were, he could potentially not bring her back. But my town already, like, the police station has copies of our child support, and in our child support papers,
That might establish the residential.
it says I have 100. She's with me 100.
Yeah, then you're not as risk. The courts will
Yes.
Stand behind you for that. So
And the fact that he hasn't seen her in almost 2 years.
but he's paying support. So
Yes, but
it's if you don't do both.
correct. And you know, it's not you want to, I want nothing more than for my daughter to have a healthy relationship with her father, a healthy one.
Right.
I would never stop them from seeing each other, but because of the fact that he hasn't seen her in over 2 years, yes, I want supervised visitations, especially since I've heard about all the drug use, and because he has been known. Actually, the girl that I became friends with, she I guess is a recovering addict, and I supported her and went to one of her meetings. And even though I don't have an addiction to drugs, I had an addiction to him.
Yes.
And so I spoke up. And I was like, you know, I don't have an addiction to drugs, but my mother died at 47 from alcoholism. My sister died at 40 from alcoholism. I know what it feels like to be around addicts. And I was and they were talking to me, and I'm like, at what point? Because everybody's like, oh, he'll see it. He's going to hit rock bottom. But I mean, you're living in a house.
See it though.
You're living in a house that's infested with bugs and rats, and you're awake. At what point is it rock bottom? That's beyond rock bottom to me. Going more than a day without
enablers. That's why it's not rock bottom.
It is, and that's very true. But so I had spoken with her off air, and we were talking, and she's like, ASHLEE, he has always had a hard addiction to drugs. She's like, he was literally doing drugs, I believe, until the day he got with you, because the way it worked was he was love bombing me in messages. Oh, you're the moon, the stars, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, so when are you going to move up here? And I literally drove with his cousin down and picked him up. And it was like we were inseparable after that. We're living together. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect.
Now, and I see it all. Even like when I first started my TikTok, even one of my long time since middle school friends came out, and he's like, ASHLEE, that makes sense. I'm like, what makes sense? Why he was asking me all those questions, because he was my best friend growing up. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, he used to ask me like what you enjoyed in the room. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like what? And he'll tell you, well, now he won't tell you, but prior to it, he would tell everybody the day he laid eyes on me, he knew I was going to be his wife. And about, let's see, May, June, July, September, October, 4 months after he left, that's when everything started clicking, and I started becoming an advocate for what I call is a form of silent abuse, because it's not normally, it's not seen, it's done in the
Right.
shadows. So I started posting stuff and educating people, and his ex-girlfriend reached out to me, the one before me, and all it said in the message was I was a victim of him as well. And I'm
Right.
like, what do you mean? And then we spent hours on the phone. And she's like, dude, he was so horrible. She's like, I was going through a miscarriage. And he told me that the reason why I was miscarrying was because my vagina was disgusting. She's like, the things he would say. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not crazy.
Right.
And I even try, and that's another thing for your viewers. Don't try to warn the new supply.
Yeah.
Don't. They're not going to listen. I even tried to warn the new supply, and then I reached out to her after I had heard that they split up, because her friends became my friends. Oddly enough, they got into a feud and reached out to me and spewed everything about their relationship. And I'm like, I really don't care. But I reached out to her and I was like, I apologize for what happened when we first met. I said, I now know that he was triangulating us against each other, and I'm not going to play it no more. Like, I'm just reaching out to you to apologize for my behavior, whatnot, doing the right thing. And her response back was, and because I told her she started getting nasty. And I'm like, I tried to warn you. She's like, you didn't try to warn me. You never warned me about him. I'm like, yes, I did. She's like, and everything that went wrong in his life was my fault. I'm like, no, girl, it was my fault too. Don't worry about that. Like, let that shit go. I'm like, it's
Right.
everybody's fault but theirs. It's never their fault. Never. They can never take accountability.
Well, on that note, Ashley, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to do a follow-up with you again if you want to do another podcast in the future.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
keep spreading the word. You have some great advice for our viewers. And I will be sending you a copy of this video so you have a link to it. And thanks again. Have a fantastic holiday break, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, Ashley.
Bye.